for all of you. Do you like stories? And here are your options. Yes, yes, of course, and from the bottom of my heart. So here we go. Guys, those who are not speaking, can you go on mute, please? So this is something I like to believe, right? That data science is as much an art as a science, and something I keep telling my team members. Guys, can those who are not speaking go on mute? There is a lot of background noise. Yeah, thank you very much. So something I love telling my team, that there is the art of problem solving and there is the art of storytelling involved. And like the last time we covered analytical problem solving, this time what we will be covering will be the storytelling aspect. So Harsh, I would request that for the benefit of everyone, let's just share the YouTube link of the previous session, right? So today what we're going to try to do is convert part of that art to scientific chunks that you can take away with yourself and implement right from tomorrow. When my cousins were little, I told them some 7 steps on how to write poems. And I would like to believe that that is one of the reasons they can write poems today. Right? So this is going to benefit you regardless of whether you are a student, you are a data and analytics professional already, you are an entrepreneur or a business professional in marketing, cybersecurity, operations, any of them, and trying to leverage analytics to sharpen the edges to take better decisions, or finally, if you are an analytics leader, it's going to benefit in all the scenarios. Now, let's look at some of the data storytelling that has happened in the last few decades, right? Last 3 decades. Do you remember this story? Feel free to put it in the chat window.
Cinderella.
Or, absolutely. Who doesn't remember Cinderella, right? This one?
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
Absolutely correct. And this one?
Avengers.
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 Correct.
Avengers.
Yes. So who doesn't remember a good story? Now, whichever one of this was really your favorite story, think about it, guys. Or even if your favorite story is another childhood story, another movie, think about it and tell me, what is it about that story that sticks with you, that makes it special? How is it a story? Or even if we could create a data story, how would that be different from a fact? How would it be different from just data, right? I would want to get your views. Feel free to use the audio route. Feel free to use the chat route.
Ganesh says it's which end with positively and the happily ever after. I think that's what it means.
That's true. That's true. So by the way, the reason there is a science behind storytelling as well, right? The happily ever after, it releases a chemical called dopamine, which makes us feel good, right? So yes, hopefully we should learn how to include dopamine in our data storytelling as well.
So, and us, we have got very fast, we're getting a lot of answers. So, okay. Mr. Surendra says it's emotions that is behind. I'll quickly tell the others also. Rahul feels it's the suspense. Jabji says it's the curiosity. And Priyadarshan says it's heroic character and the super love. Yes.
Amazing. Amazing answers.
Mr. Mohammed Asim says it's which makes impact. And Ishan says something which is so generic and universal that people can understand it just like meme. And I also would like to add here, it's also the power of visions. I really you guys have seen that movie Drishyam when Tabu explains the impact of these visuals that we live. So that's the kind of impact, right? So I think that is also there. And we also have few more answers. I'll quickly take it. The 2 answers which are there now. Preeti says story is the thing that can't be forgettable. Very true. And Kamal Pratap feels it's related to the reality. And Preeti also feels, Tejasvi says it's also the thriller factor which is there with the
True.
super myths that Priya Darshan has added. And just last answer I take for now, Anshul feels stories are instrumental in cognitive, social, and emotional development, with adventure as per as Rishabh also. And we feel connected as per Rahul. So thanks for the answers. Over to
So
you.
true. I think everything that you have covered makes so much sense. So I was reading about the science behind this art of storytelling. And like I said, the happy ending, it triggers dopamine, right? When you feel connected with someone, when you feel empathetic towards one of the characters, it releases oxytocin. And all of that curiosity that one of you spoke about, it's when there is a conflict, right? Our stress chemicals are released, which is called cortisol. So it's really now how we need to see how our stories can also have all of these chemicals released, right? So if I have to summarize everything that you said, it can be broken into these three main buckets. A great story has a seamless flow. It has an impactful message and it's very interesting, right? So when it comes to flow, we are going to cover about the structure and the content design of your data story. When it comes to message, last time we covered insights generation. So feel free to see the YouTube link for the same. And today we're going to see how should you tailor your recommendation for the audience. And finally, when it comes to interesting presentation, visualization, and if you really want to see how to create drama, then you will need to wait till the end, my dear friends. It's a 1.5 hour session. Just want to make sure you all remember that, right? So I've also devised all of my content with regards to these three buckets. In between each of them, we'll be waiting to take up questions. All right. So this is the real challenge, isn't it? We all love stories. We know why they work, but our audience is new. And we now want to understand how to tailor it as per this new corporate audience. Whether it is a client that you work for, or whether it is a stakeholder that you are doing your work for, or you are yourself an analyst or an entrepreneur, but you want to use data better to make better decisions. We are going to now see how a typical story works in the corporate world, right? Is this not how every story begins? Once upon a time, there lived a king and queen who ruled over the kingdom and were loved by their people. And then there was a troublesome monster that came their way. It was creating havoc. And then they invited the saint over who gave them some good advice, after which they were able to defeat the monster. So, the moral of the story, the happy ending, there is no happily ever after, but at least there is a temporarily happy, right? So, yeah. Now, how would this translate into the corporate world? Let me show all of you. So, who is that king and queen? The people, the characters in the story, they are your client and your stakeholders. You better treat them well, right? Second, the context. When I say they were loved by the people, you need to understand the roles, the responsibilities of these stakeholders, right? Now, there is always that point of conflict, that happy and sad emotions that we have during a story. That's the point where in our corporate world, we have that monster called the challenge or the pain point that we are really facing at this point. Now, I would want to call out one thing here, guys. Storytelling on the outside would look like an onion, right? But it is really the layers of that onion that you need to need to master. And all these three that you see here are the inner layers. Or rather, let me also say they are like the hidden portion, that 80% hidden portion of the iceberg that's not visible from the top. So if you really want to master the story, you need to first master understanding your client, their exact environment, how their daily life looks like, what are the pain points, what are the reason for their professional pain points, right? And once you have done that, you can become the saint with your analysis that leads to something insightful. And finally, you can give them that happy ending through your recommendation. So this is a glimpse of the corporate storytelling. Now, let's get into the details. So the first question that we see is, a story is very seamless. It's very coherent in its structure. So how do we go about doing it? The first thing that I should be telling you is something I learned from one of my mentors, Sangram, that tools matter a lot less than what we do with the tool. When I ask a question in an interview that, do you know visualization and storytelling? They tell me, I have worked on Power BI, I have worked on Tableau, right? I've worked on ClickView, but those are the tools and they are important. There's no doubt in that. But what we're talking about here, my dear friends, is that process, right? So let's learn that process better now. So first of all, when it comes to any structure that you would see, you'll observe whether it's a pitch that you're going to make for your story, or whether it is a dashboard, a collateral. You can think of related chunks of information, but there are different bits that we are covering. So think of them like rectangles, like here. There's a map, there are different charts, there are timeline. So a typical good dashboard would look something like this, right? So you have the key matrix, which are the KRAs of your stakeholder probably, or some business stakeholder. Let's say, for example, attainment, which if your attainment is 90% sales attainment, and that really means is that your target was 100, but you only achieved 90. So the question you will have when you look at these figures is why? What is the reason? What is the root cause? And the second section is generally the reasoning behind the same, the context building. And then further questions go at the bottom, right? So that is how the generic to specific flow we should be having in some of our stories. Now, continuing on the same, how do you build an even more powerful message, right? So let's learn something from marketing here. I am a true marketer by heart, even though I've spent all my career in data science, worked very extensively in marketing analytics, and the concept of touch points, it comes useful to this day. Right, so what is a touch point? A touch point is anything about a product that gives you more information, hopefully positive information. So for example, if I am trying to buy a Samsung phone, then whether it's the offline store, the online website, they're touch points for me. The phone itself is a touch point for me. In fact, if you're going to the store and there is a person who is standing outside, even that doorman is a touch point for you. Right? They're giving you information and they are to some extent making your buying decision change, right? So how do we build better touch points in our storytelling? So firstly, something that works very well in general is having beneath your topic, having a horizontal logic line, right? Which kind of summarizes what your objective is, what are your key takeaways, and it sets the context also for anyone who may not know about this project, right? The second thing is that adding relevant links, whether that's to a smart sheet, it is to another collateral, it is to a dashboard, any of them, it kind of unifies everything together, right? Now, one thing to keep in mind is that there are people learn differently, right? And even our school programs are now addressing the fact that someone is a more visual person. They look at a chart and in a jiffy, they're able to understand what we are trying to say. Well, someone else is more, a number person. They look at a table, they look at conditional formatting perhaps, and they understand better. And a third person maybe need to told about it in a single one-liner English sentence. So you should ideally have a good mix of all learning styles if you want to tell a good story. The second thing is about these multiple touch points, right? So use as many media as your business context allows you, right? Using a collateral, a simulation, a video, a dashboard, different forms, they lead to different absorptions, right? And finally, one thing that works very well in my teams is and brings up a lot of speed. So the challenge that we face today is we are working under very short timelines, isn't it? So what happens is we hardly get time for that last mile challenge of building the story together, right? So what we might want to do is I have created a template or many templates for my teams. One is for in a PowerPoint form, one is for dashboards, where we have a lot of client ready formats that are ready, right? So what we do is once an analysis is done, we simply just pick up one of those templates and the overall process becomes much faster. So that's about the macro level structuring that we've been talking about so far, right? So we've talked about the various, rectangles being chunks of information. Now let's look at how to decide what information to fill in each of these chunks, right? So the components. One thing that works very well at a micro level is an executive summary, especially if you have an executive audience, it really works very well, right? Then using a lot of examples, analogies helps further build the context. Asking good questions, especially if there are rhetoric questions, it catches attention. You might have observed this, that someone telling you versus someone asking you a question, when they are asking, when there is a question mark, someone sees, when the tone is that of questioning, you can hardly ignore it, right? So that's an attention seeker. Roadmap is one strong item when you're discussing about the next steps with someone, right? One thing that I really wanted to talk about is the storyboard. So a storyboard is really an infographic where there is a lot of analysis done in a story fashion. So I would like to share an episode here. During a quarterly business review with one of our sponsors who's really giving us millions of dollars of business, what we were doing is we showed various analysis that we had presented, as well as we were showing a storyboard to him. And he got so intrigued, he got so involved in the storyboard that he asked us to create two more that he was going to share with the 2000 odd audience in his company, right? So sometimes storytelling may not be the reason someone recruits you or pays you, but it may be your point of differentiation. It may become that factor of stickiness for you, right? And lo and behold, there are lots of more things coming up. It's going to become a heavy slide now. So feel free to take a snapshot, but there are many more things that you can enhance your structure, your flow with. Could be supporting data, various ideas, multiple options, hypothesis, right? So on and so forth. All right. Moving ahead, we would be now moving to the second section, the so what of things. And before we do that, I would invite questions from all of you.
Rajant, I think we can move on. There are okay, one second. Richa, okay, can you go back to the previous slide? I think the just got a message that they again want to take a snapshot.
Okay, sure.
So,
There you go.
I hope the snapshots are taken now. Rajneet, we don't have any questions for now. You can go ahead.
All right, let's move on. So the message or the so what, and I would like to start with a story back from 2014 here. Bhumi was really excited about the catch up with her principal of the consulting firm. She was going to present her Dimpany launch analysis, and her manager had also commented on her performance, stating that this is how an analyst should think. The client Linda was also very impressed. She appreciated the level of detail, the various variables she had used, right? And she was going to consume it. The final outcome of the same, the market share Dimpany would get, she was going to use it in all her marketing pitches. So even during the learning sessions, her colleagues found her approach very intriguing. The way she had quantified the analysis, the impact of clinical trials, how various patient cohorts would adopt in different countries, they all found it very interesting. Now, what happens during the review? So here is Bhumi. She is concluding her speech, right? So she says that hence Dimpany would reach its peak in 2018, post which the competitor launch of Atomate would reduce its share, right? So this is the feedback from the partner. Bhumi, I understand that you've put in a lot of efforts, but where is the story? You have to remember that the story depends not just on who you are and what analysis you did, but also who hears it, right? And in this case, guys, Bhumi is me, and I take this message in my heart till this day, right? So what I did not realize at that point is that we have to change the message as per the audience. The manager was happy because there was a new process that was set up by Bhumi, and they could use it accordingly. What intrigued the client was the market share, and she only used the final outcome, whereas the other colleagues enjoyed that approach, right? And they got to learn about a new way of doing things. There was absolutely nothing for the partner, right? And that brings me to the next concept, that is that how we should tailor our message with the audience and the objective, right? And there is another story that I would like to tell you from my MBA days. At one point, what had happened was that my roommate, she had felt very sick. That day, she had very, very high fever. And to cheer her up, I had told her a story of a chocolate fantasy land where there was a river with a milky bar, and the gems, the sand was created of gems, and there were chocolate trees, so on and so forth. Do you think if I called her up today and told her the same story, she would be excited? And on that day, it was one time during the day when I told the story, she smiled. But today, she would tell me, Rajo, my 3-month-old is crying. Can I talk to you later, please? Right? So even with the same audience, the context, the current challenge and pain point should be kept in mind when we are trying to give our message, right? So in a typical corporate world, these are the kind of audience that you'll see. They can be a senior management, customers, team members, and peers, and an external forum like this. And the way we would send a message to each of them differs, right? So, for example, a senior manager, probably we would want to keep things very crisp, and the so what of it, the impact of what we have done should be the priority. Whereas our teams and peers would be very interested in the details of our approach, right? Similarly, what is your objective in this story? That also needs to be kept in mind, whether it's a decision or an action or an information sharing that you're trying to do. So if you want to take a decision, maybe you should give multiple options A, B, C, and let them take a decision. Whereas information sharing, right? Like this session, I'm sharing information. So there is no specific action that we would want to take. So this is how we would want to tailor the message as per the audience. And remember, the recommendation that we would give starts with the insights generation, which we can do using the bus technique that we discussed last time. Right? So I want you to take a few seconds, pause, and see how you would tailor each of these boxes. How would you approach each of these boxes? And that brings us to the end of the second section. And it's going to be all interesting now because we are going to talk about the emotion and the drama. But I would like to take up questions first.
I think Rajneet, everyone is so kind of intrigued with whatever you're discussing. They are just wanting to listen to you.
Oh, that's great to know. So, Harsh, you are a cybersecurity practitioner, and data storytelling is important in every field. Why don't you tell us your view about how storytelling is important in cybersecurity and any examples of the same?
Sure, I would love to. And I think, first of all, Rajneet, I think, like you had said in the start, all of us love stories, right? Because it connects to us, to our emotions, to our fears. And when we see a story, visualize it, it's like we are relating our lives to that. So that's a kind of impact. And I remember as soon as you were showing those images, of the stories of Cinderella, Avengers, everyone were very excited and very quickly. It didn't even take few seconds to even relate and tell a story that we have seen 25 years or maybe 20, 25, 30 years or 10 years back, right? So that's the impact of storytelling. It is a language we associate from a very young age, and it's really good that you are actually decoding storytelling for all of us. And yes, you're very much right. Even as this is as a person, of course, but even as a cybersecurity professional, uh,
Mm-hmm.
storytelling has been very important to us, especially in times like today. But for that, let me go a little back into the history of cyber security and cyber crimes, everything, because everyone, each one of us are getting affected today. So it will also help in understanding. Even
Mm-hmm.
a decade back, Rajneet, and all of you to know, these cyber crimes, virus attacks, hacks were more for snobbish appeal, for fun factor, for feeling cool, right? But what
True, true.
happened then is that this became much more organized, much more
Mm.
advanced, much more professional, and they became a full-fledged business. They became united, and there were some top-notch words like social engineering, which in simple language means that we became their study of how we live, what we eat, or what is that excites us, what is that creates fears in us. And that is how they took our advantage. And these are the challenges we have not yet kind of resolved. We are still grappling with it. And today, do you know what is the impact of cyber crimes at a national, international level? Today, cybercrime
Mm-hmm.
is the third largest economy with $6 trillion damages. Which means it's just after US and China. And this is much more profitable than even the drug trade business. And it also surpasses all the cost that you can see, damages that comes up because of natural disasters. And then it's no wonder that World Economic Forum considers this as the biggest human induced threat and among the top 5 global risk, otherwise also in their global risk report 2020. And you know how this has increased so much? First, let
Mm-hmm.
me tell you when it has increased so much. Just in this new normal 1.5 years, there is a 600% growth in cyber crimes, which is according to United Nations. So we understand how serious it has become for all of us. But what also happens is storytelling is a way how we can actually bring that inclusiveness. See, we have to increase our army. And I do remember, Rajni, you mentioning once this to me, that just like sales and marketing is intuitive to me, cyber also needs to be intuitive. How do we make it intuitive for you? That is the power of day to day, analogies, relating it to the characters and the things around us, right? That is how you will relate. We convert it into the language you understand, and that is through the power of storytelling, maybe through visuals, maybe through day-to-day examples. Now let me talk about myself. We're talking about how others can be included. Even if I have to talk to my customers, um, maybe the IT heads, even the CFOs, because today it is a senior board level discussion also. But what is happening, unfortunately, even the senior level management or the business users, they are not technical, right? In fact, major of the senior board management do not have these skills related to cybersecurity. Again, over here, a lot of our CISO and these customer friends, how do they explain these technologies? It's converting this to the business language which others understand. This whole process is not storytelling. Then what is it? Right, Rajneet? And
True.
even if I have to talk my day-to-day life, if I have to give the reviews to my senior management, or if I have to even train my partners, I have to use a lot of these storytelling examples, dashboards, or maybe even graphics, maybe in a review of how am I performing, the growth that is there, right? All of us,
Sure.
we constantly do this, and this is how we can promote inclusiveness, as well as we can also grow. So I think at this point I've spoken quite a bit. Let me also use a different approach to explain my point and what you have been doing in a musical way. So, Gurtej, can you help me with that video?
Yes, yes. I'm just sharing.
Thank you.
Sure. Yes, Gurtej, we can see your screen.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, yes, we are able to see your screen. But we are able to see just your desktop.
Let's just wait for a few more seconds. It's something very, very interesting.
Harsh, would you like to give a context behind what we are
Okay, so since we're talking about, okay, it has already come. So
Yo, man.
yeah, you can start off. It's okay. I can
Gurtej, yes.
share the context later. Just restart that.
Very interesting video. Yeah.
We can't see the.
Yo, man. Hello? Can you help me, man? Sure. How can I help you? My account just got wiped. You must be joking.
Gurjesh, please continue. Don't stop it.
We were able to see it, Gurtej. Okay, let's try once more.
Yo, man. Hello? Can you help me, man? Sure. How can I help you? My account just got wiped. You must be joking. I don't know how I let this happen. By who? Some guy pretending to be you, you know? Man, I don't know what to do. It wasn't me. Alright. A fellow email me, dear customer, there seems to be a payment issue. You need to send us your He's so clumsy and click on the dubious link. All this time he was
Gurtesh, any challenges that you're facing?
You have to know how to play. If you say a moment, don't give him time of day. Never listen to a word of
Uh, Harsha, would you like to play it on your end?
Password. It wasn't me. To verify my account number. It wasn't me. I even sent him a picture. It wasn't me. He dreamed my account and it was over.
I will play from my end.
A fellow email me, dear customer, there seems to be a payment issue. You need to send us your account number and we'll resolve it for you. How could I be so clumsy and click on that dubious link? All this time he was after my password and username. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
I'll just replay it for all of us. Just a second.
Apologies everyone for that delay. We'll just replay it quickly. And Harsh, let's also share the video because this is a very interesting way of explaining. It's a poem, it's a song on what you should do, what you should not do when it comes to cybersecurity.
Just a second.
Mm-hmm.
Not downloaded it, but I have good connection. So let's hope. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
It wasn't me. Okay, I am restarting. Rajni, if there's any challenge, please let me know.
Sure.
The voice is coming?
No, voice is not coming. You need to reshare with that checkbox of voice, Harsh.
Okay, let me just check out again.
Mm-hmm. You'll have to reshare your screen on Zoom.
I'll do that. Just a second.
Yeah.
Rajit, where's the option of okay, yeah, share sound, yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think technical glitch still the bane of the new normal. So please let me know if this is still there.
This is fine.
Oh, man.
Okay, I'll just, the volume is also fine?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. Apologies, guys, but we'll see the video again because the impact of a story, can be felt like this. So yes, over to the song.
Yo, man.
Hello?
Can you help me, man?
Sure. How can I help you?
My account just got wiped.
You must be joking.
I don't know how I let this happen.
By who?
Some guy pretending to be you, you know? Man, I don't know what to do.
It wasn't me.
Alright. A fellow email me, dear customer, there seems to be a payment issue. You need to send us your account number and we'll resolve it for you. How could I be so clumsy and click on the dubious link? All this time he was after my password and username.
Or can you grant us greater access to your data? Hackers and a fraud is always lying in the waiter. You better watch your back, don't fall for the beta. Let's review the situation that you're caught up in. To be a safe player, you have to know how to play. If you say a moment, don't give them time of day. Never listen to a word when they say. And if they claim that they're the bank, tell them no way.
But he sent me a reminder.
It wasn't me.
Messaged me on WhatsApp.
It wasn't me.
He even called me in the shower.
It wasn't me.
He told me I won the lottery.
It wasn't me.
He asked me for my password.
It wasn't me.
To verify my account number.
It wasn't me.
I even sent him a picture.
It wasn't me.
He dreamed my account and it was over. A fellow email me, dear customer, there seems to be a payment issue. You need to send us your account number and we'll resolve it for you. How could I be so clumsy and click on that dubious link?
Yes. I hope, we all had a step or two sitting, where we are, just like I did. And, I know it's a little difficult to very quickly come back from such an interesting musical video. But yes, we will come back because one day we also want to have, those skills impacting something like this. If you see that video, I think that is, I think, the best and one of the most powerful musical way to tell a story, right, Rajneet? I'm sure even
Absolutely.
I'm sure if your camera was not on, you would have also actually done few steps over here.
Oh, I was dancing.
So,
All
so
right.
what you see over here, of course, what Rajneet is going to cover, the emotion, the drama, the relatable characters, that banker uncle and the cool dude. Although honestly, I liked that banker uncle and the kind of steps he was doing, more cool and more cute. But yeah, those characters, there's some very powerful message also over here. What fraudsters do, which the other authorities like bank won't. So uh, equally this is important, and like Rajneet said, trying to having that objective, as well as what was the other thing, Rajneet, that you had said, the objective and the audience, right?
Audience,
Yeah, so
yes.
keeping that in mind, I think, yeah, thanks, sort of, yeah, I really feel it was amazing and fun that ways. So I think with this, I have put on my point of the importance of storytelling in cybersecurity through that video. And at this point, I think, Rajneet, over to you. I've taken enough time of yours.
Thank you very much. And let's proceed. So, how do we go about making things interesting, right? So, it does remind this video, it reminds me of the time for my own professional growth. One of the things I was responsible, other than being a data science manager, was this community of practice that we run at eClerx, and we've spent more than 50 sessions, which means more than 4 years, right? We've been continuing, and there we are currently doing the 10th competition there. So for the hackathons that we had, I used to write some poems, and sometimes, I mean, I have actually received um, uh, top management VPs writing to me and appreciating those poems, or the brand mascot Kittu that I had created then when I got promoted or won an award. So yes, that is there is storytelling about you as a person also that you could learn from here. So yes, but when it comes to making your everyday data work interesting, I would like to make it interesting by starting with a story again, right? So, hurry up, Nitin. Seema is saying our presentation starts in 10 minutes, and Bhumi, our manager, is already here. Now, what Nitin says is, oh, I'll be there in 2 minutes. I really do not want to be late for our first corporate presentation. So both of them had recently joined from college, and I'm sure all of you can relate to this scenario, the nervousness of joining for the first time, your first company, or maybe even shifting companies, but it's your first presentation. But 10 minutes later, what happens is we have looked at the revenue performances across time, across various dimensions as well, like product and place, is what both of them say. And what Bhumi says is good to know, great to know. And I'm very excited to see what you all have prepared. So coming up next is the collateral that both of them prepared, right? Here it is. So this is the revenue analysis for the year 2020, right? Various visuals and findings that both of them have put together, right? Now, I would want to hear from all of you through audio or chat. What do you think about this? What are some of the things that are working well according to you? What are some of the things that are areas of improvement? If you were Bhumi, what would you tell Nitin and Seema? Yes, so I am looking forward to hearing everyone's views.
The sales share pie chart is confusing. It only has percentages. I don't know what is the
Absolutely.
actual there. So I would like more information there for starters.
Okay.
Thank you, Gurpreet.
Yes, it is confusing. Well said, Gurpreet. What else?
I think. Ishan says should concentrate on Mumbai-based clients. Okay, I
Okay,
think on the
so
pie
the
chart.
takeaway, yes. So what we are saying is that Mumbai is more than a fourth, so we should focus there. It's a takeaway, very good takeaway.
Okay. Tripti feels that the pie chart can be presented in a different visual like a tree map. So again, I think it's on the same thing. Trends are good, but and she also feels bar charts as well shows comparison.
Okay, all right.
I have a blanket comment on all the diagrams here. There are no units anywhere.
Okay, makes sense.
Okay.
So,
SF feels trend map could add a threshold so we know how we are trending.
okay, sure, makes sense.
It's a lot of interesting observations, interesting and quick ones. I'll also add something, the rightmost cities slide. I think it's really confusing for me, and as well as the revenue chart in the left and the upmost. I cannot actually see that light blue color exactly. So this is just
Sure.
what I felt. Maybe you can tell better.
Okay.
Okay, and Priyadarshan says it won't work for all audience because you need to have more easily representation.
That's true. That's true. And like we just saw also, you have to tailor things as per the audience. So currently they are prepared for their manager, but let's say if we were doing it for the client, it would work differently. Yeah, absolutely well said. Okay, shall we proceed?
Yes.
I think we have some more comments coming in.
Okay. You want me to tell? Yes.
That's
Yes. Shanawaz says only charts used, not mix of chart and table. Okay.
that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. And Tripti says all visuals should have data labels so we know the numbers. I think in similar lines to what Gurpreet had added before. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
One more message has come. City-wise sales data is unintelligible. I think this was also this is the
True.
second observation here.
Yes. And there are no slices as well, right? Makes sense. Everything that you all have said is true. And there are going to be few things that I will cover, but yes, the pointers that you have covered is definitely more than what I had thought. So great observations, great learnings. So the first thing as Bhumi that I would tell all of my team members is they've done it for the first time, right? So good finding Seema and Nitin, especially for your first attempt. Let's be empathetic when we become managers, guys. Let's first appreciate, and then, yes, we will evolve in our structuring of content over time. But there are few visualization guidelines that you can implement right away. But one thing that you have to remember is that there is no fixed rules. They're just rules of thumb, right? So what you will finally pick up will depend on your intent and what you think is worth calling out. So first of all, less is more, right? There is actually a rule of simplicity that says that you should deduct the obvious and retain and emphasize on what is meaningful. So if you see this chart, how I would change, make it more simpler and readable would be something like this, is what Bhumi says. So if you see the grid lines, if they are not required, they just make it more complicated. The same color of the axis, the line and the heading, no legend required. Plus you might observe a lot of times when there are secondary axes involved, things get very complicated. You don't know what is what. And that way you can make it simpler, right? And more attractive as well. Now, I would want you all to tell me what is wrong with this one, right? There are two comparison of 2 years. Absolutely well said. We should be adding the units here. Let's say they are dollars, right? But what else?
Yes. Saurav says it's a dual axis chart, and Tripti feels it's grid lines as well.
Okay, that grid lines would be the previous. Yes, absolutely. I think both of you well said that the axes are not correct, right? So the axes are not matching. If you see what happens because of that, this 20 looks smaller than this 30 here. In fact, 50, 20, 30 is exactly in the same proportion as 75, 30, 45. But in the second graph, you feel like the product 2 is lesser in contribution. So this is a mistake that we commonly do, but we should definitely avoid. Don't go for just the default accesses that Excel or PowerPoint gives you. Make sure that when you're comparing two things, they have the same axis, right? Now, when it comes to the revenue spike that we spoke about, right? I'm going to duplicate and create exactly the same chart 2 more times. But trust me, the dopamine that you will feel, the emotion that you will feel will be very different. So that's the impact of aspect ratio, right? So
Rajni, you'll have to again explain this point. One of Sarvajit wants to understand a little more on this.
okay, sure. We have a question.
The last chart, sorry.
The point isn't, can you, Sarvajit, go on unmute and just tell me what your question is? This one? This one? Sarvajit, can you confirm, please?
Yeah, this chart. I didn't get what was wrong with this.
Correct. So if you see, Sarvajit, here, product 2 is at 20 units and product 3 is 30. But this bar chart is looking smaller because you're starting with 20 as the baseline. It's not starting from 0. So both of this, the start number to end number is a gap of 60, 0 to 60, as well as 20 to 80. But you need to make a consistent axis in both so that they become comparable. So both of them ideally should have something like a 0 to 80 so that you can see these numbers have grown in their units, right? You are able to compare the two, right? And better still, you can even compare them and make a clubbed column chart. Does that make sense, Sarvajit?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, most welcome. Yeah. All right, so proceeding. Sometimes what we do, guys, is there is little bit space remaining and we cram the chart in that much space, but the emotion associated with it changes, right? So you can see if I wanted to encourage my client and I did a promotion in September, this chart would have so much more impact than the other two, right? So again, there is no right and wrong, but we need to be careful about the aspect ratio, the ratio of the length and the width. Right. So this is one thing that Bhumi calls out to her team members. Okay, I'll move on to the next one. And this is what she says about this pie chart, right? Like Gurpreet very clearly called out that you don't know what is coming out of this, right? So think of a movie. In a movie, what happens is that you just have maybe, one hero and one villain who are highlighted in different ways. They are maybe more flamboyant, or when they make an entry, there is a sound, there are more colors, whatever it is. Everything else should remain dull, right? Because you want to highlight your hero or your villain. So if your intention by this chart was to highlight that Mumbai gives you more than a fourth of the share, then use neutral or dull colors for everything else and make your hero stand out. Whereas your intent may be different, that you want to show comparison between two cities, right? So Mumbai is, let's say, 10% more than Pune. Then you could go for a bar chart, right? If you're able to see, comparison becomes far easier in this, line-based chart. You are even able to see Chennai and Bangalore a little bit different, right? Though they are similar percentages, which is not very clear in the above bar chart, right? So the selection of the chart is depending on what you are trying to tell, right? Now, finally, this chart on the right bottom, it really does not convey any message because you are using trend across time for so many colors that you just don't know what's coming out, right? So here, for example, like we discussed, if you wanted to highlight that Mumbai is topper throughout, you can color that in a bright color and everything else in duller colors. Or if you wanted to maybe say that, oh, Delhi, if you see, it has very inconsistent performance. There are highs and lows, then you can color that one in a bright color, right? But if you really needed to show all of them together, right? You want to show how each city is trending, then maybe a lattice chart may do a better job, right? So here, if you can see, we have the average line, and I can clearly see Mumbai is always very high. I can see that Pune and Hyderabad are comparable to the average, and I can see how inconsistent Delhi is, right? So in fact, maybe the quarter one dip might be because of Delhi, right? So those are some of the first few bits about visualization practices. Now, there is a case study from McKinsey that we are able to now see, where I have a question for all of you. So the objective of this particular case study is how much more GDP will be able to add if we focus on gender equality, right? We'll be able to, in Asia Pacific itself, add a whooping $4.5 trillion by 2025. So there are two questions I have for all of you. The first is, what according to you are the good practices that McKinsey has adopted here? And the second is, it's McKinsey, right? Why do you think they use such a simple chart as a bar chart at the top? And if they had to, why did they use a lollipop at the bottom? Why not the same type of chart above and below? So, two questions. What are the good practices? And second, why not use the same type of chart above and below? Time to put on your thinking hats.
Essa says it's color segregation to show a cutoff.
Very good
I
point.
think,
Blue color for
can
the
you just repeat the question? Priyadarshan wants to know it.
Yes, yes. So there are two questions. The first is, what are the good practices they have adopted here? And the second question is, why not use the same type of chart? There is a bar chart at the top and a lollipop at the bottom, right?
Haridas adds over here to make best visualization sense. And Richa also adds here that bar chart, it is a easy representation and, from the different charts to highlight. And we have few more answers. Rajni, I'll take it quickly.
Yes.
Yes. Nikhil says it's because we want to differentiate in both the scenarios. And Haridas adds it's a proper space utilization as well as better chart quantifies as well. Below chart quantifies as well as per Richa. And then Naman adds here that the reason for not using bar chart below is because the values are not in any particular range. As okay, one second. Richa says that as per the lollipop size, below chart quantifies all. And Gandhi adds that, okay, it is to identify fast. And I think I'll also add over here, if you see that according to this Asia Pacific average 11.6, if we see India is 17.6, the range is between 5.4 to 11.6. So maybe it is not as variable according to me, and maybe this then clearly stands out average versus the different countries in one chart itself for the upper one.
Correct. So see, one good practice that we are able to see is the blue versus green. Everything that's above the average, we are putting blue. So that's one good way of differentiating, right? Some of you did try to answer it absolutely correctly, that if you see the range of the below chart versus the above, right? Like Harsh was also saying, India at 17.6 versus Singapore at 5.4. It's probably a ratio of 3, right? But if you look at the ratio of values below, you have a 2600 for China and you have a 3 for Nepal. That's more than 800 times ratio. So if you even tried to represent the below chart in a bar chart, that 3 wouldn't even be visible because of the 2600, right? In the above chart, bar chart, it's beautiful when you have a lesser range and you are even able to compare a 9.8 and a 9.6. Trust me, if you used a lollipop chart or any area chart like a tree map for 9.8 and 9.6, they will look exactly the same, right? So good points, and I think there are still points coming up. But one of the major reasons why they did this is because of the range of values that we are talking about, right? The above and below are very different, and which brings us to the concept of visual encoding, right? Visual encoding is the language, the way R, Python, English, Marathi are. It's the language of visuals, right? So a position chart is like a line chart where going higher or lower makes us read values, right? Length chart example could be like a bar chart, right? Whether it's column based or row based. An angle chart, anyone would want to guess? Okay, it's a pie chart. A pie, through the angle, you are able to see things, right? Or a donut chart. Area-based charts, we just saw lollipop. We have a tree map chart also that's very frequently used. And then you have the color, right? So lighter shade versus darker shade, you're able to see the darker is a higher value generally. And sometimes we may even use different shapes to tell a different story, right? When we move from left to right, we become less accurate. But like we just saw, everything has its own place, right? Just because there is a singer, that doesn't mean a drummer won't be there in a band, right? A drummer's job is to be more in the background. But without the drum, without the Casio, without the guitar, the voice of the show will not be as musical. So each type of visualization has its own value, right? And like we just saw, range is also one factor. There are many other good practices that we use. For example, if it's a time series based chart, I would use a line position based graph, right? Like a line graph. When it comes to market share of something and there are very few values, a pie chart would do a good job, right? When there are multiple categories we are trying to cater to, maybe a length based chart like a bar chart would do the job, right? So clearly this session, 1.5 hour session, is not enough to cover everything. But what I would encourage all of you to do is study more about visual encoding, right? So we are going to take up the drama section next, right? Okay, I think some of them were trying to answer the types of charts. Well said. Right, so before we take the drama, are there any other questions? We're going to get to the most interesting bit now. Harsh, can you take up the two things that we were going to share?
Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay.
So when it comes to drama, right, we are really trying to evoke those three chemicals, right? Your cortisol, oxytocin, dopamine, right? So some of the ways that I thought could help, right? Just hold on, Harsh. I'll just explain something first. The first thing that I would recommend is use the brand elements of your organization or client, right? So for example, the colors they use, the logo they use, right? The product shape that they use. So for example, we'll just scroll now, Harsh. This is pudding.cool, and we are talking about pocket sizes of men versus women here. So if your product is jeans and we are doing an analysis on pocket sizes of women versus men, see how much more visual and engaging this is, right? Just scroll further. Harsh, do you think we could not use a bar chart here? Just scroll further, keep scrolling. Right? We could have actually done it, right? But when you see these things coming together, it becomes way more interesting, right? Yes. So the second thing that I would like to tell you is make things more simulating. Can you share the other one, Harsh?
Yes, yes. Just a second.
Yep. How to make things more engaging. The second thing is by simulating it, right? So the way gamification is a very big term today, right? So this is how to fix a toilet.com. Just hold on. And here there is an analysis that's done on how people searching on various commodities inside of a house. So how do I fix my washing machine, my door, my bulb, etc., etc. What you're seeing right now in front of your eyes is the world average, right? The pink line is the world average. And you can simulate, you can actually play. Let's put in India and check how things change. Woo. So you can say we are really searching about bulbs, and we are hardly searching about washing machines or even for that matter sinks, right? Let's put in another country. Anything of your choice, Harsh?
Russia.
Russia. Oh, they are really not searching about anything other than washing machines, right? So creating simulations, whether it's in Excel, any tool where they can play around, right? So at one point, one of my clients, they wanted us to create a simulator on which they can decide their pricing, the pricing as well as the marketing spend they want to do. So what they do is they put in different numbers, and the output, how much they'll be able to achieve the target accordingly changes, right? So it helps them take a decision, and it is so much more appealing, isn't it? And finally, Harsh, I'll now take over. So this is the second one.
Rajneet, why don't we take one or more from the audience if they want to see some specific country?
Guys, any request? Go through audio. I would say any other country that you want to try out here?
China, Australia.
China and Australia. Okay, let's see.
Ma'am, New Zealand.
Okay, just we'll do it very quickly.
Let's see. Yeah. No, I think we have plenty of time. Let's let them try.
So China.
I think Australia and New Zealand, both examples came in. They are neighbors, right? Let's see how different they are. Or are
now I've put for China. Can you first, would you like to interpret, or should I quickly just take up and show them?
Looks like India to me, frankly.
Okay. The BRIC nation. Okay, now I'll take up Australia. Sorry, Australia, yes.
Okay. It's because of Australia that they're searching so much about doors and about bulbs, right? New Zealand is very different, right? Especially on the bulb side.
Ma'am, search for Pakistan.
Okay. Let's see how Pakistan and India are different, because neighboring nations, ideally, I just have a feeling they might be. This also, it feels like India to me.
Harsh, just search for Bhutan as well.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. Similar.
Yeah. And now type India.
Again. Okay, I'll put India again.
Okay. We are searching more.
Canada.
Germany.
Okay, after this I'll put Canada.
Okay,
you can see the
we'll definitely also put the link for all of you to try out things yourself, guys. Right?
I think simulation really makes it interesting, Rajneet. I'll just put the last Germany because that was a request, and then you can take over.
Yes. So all of that is your cortisol getting released, guys, because you're getting very curious, and this is an attention grabber, right? Israel. Okay, I think what we'll do is we'll share the link and they can play around. But if you scroll further, Harsh, there is also a chart of the world map and what they are most searching, right? So who is searching most of what? So yeah, it's very interesting. So see, just by changing instead of the world shape to the items that we were talking about, to the products that we are talking about, it becomes far more engaging, right? Because they're able to relate it with the different things. I'll just take my screen share again, and I'm going to talk about the third element, right? So before we go to the third element, on the product side, right? This is one more example about drama. So this is about someone drinking coffee. How much of it is that they're doing? I could use a bar chart. It would make it far more accurate, right? I could use a line graph. But see, how beautifully each of the months someone is drinking coffee, each of the weeks, I can actually visually spot the differences. I can see how May is doing far more, and December there is hardly any coffee this person is drinking. I don't know why. December is cold, but yes, maybe trying to leave coffee, right? So yes. The final tip I would like to give in terms of creating the drama is personalization, right? So even when COVID hit in the first wave, when we heard that millions as a number, trust me, guys, we as humans, we can't imagine big numbers. But when it started hitting close, when our family members were impacted, when the neighbor was impacted, when we could put a name to that number, we were able to actually feel it, right? So this is how I had started a story, a presentation, which was my first presentation during MBA. The topic was about how do you decide the location of a factory, of a plant, right? So I introduced Raghunath. Raghunath is my friend. He's a farmer. A poor thing, he hardly makes a living. He's not able to even cut his cost pretty well. He runs a sugarcane farm, right? And the sad thing is that the sugarcane farm, the factory that takes, the closest factory is more than an hour away, right? So what happens because of that is the sugarcane, what happens with sugarcane as a product is that it loses its cane value very fast. So a high quality cane, let's say it gives you 50 kg sugar, but poor quality, it gives you much lesser. So the more you have to travel, the farther the factory is, the cane value reduces. And hence my poor friend Raghunath, for the same efforts he put in, the ROI is much lesser, right? So the recommendation here is that keep your factory closer to the source, to the farms, so that it's not just a win-win. It's a win-win, not just for Raghunath, because he gets a better value, he earns more, he can run his family, but also for the factory, which gets much higher quality gain, right? So personalize, put names. Even if you put imaginary names, like I created all those stories today, even that does the job, right? Final tip from my end would be it's a learning process. So these are some of the folks that have been my influencers. I've grown up hearing stories from my grandfather, Gurbakh Singh. Sangram Chandgude he was the visualization practice head at eClerx at one point, and Alberto Caro, he's a thought leader that I've been following. And everything that I've learned has been, it's been a decade that I have put together. Hope this journey was a roller coaster for you and it has just started, and hope you really enjoyed the session.
Can I just add one thing, Rajneet, here?
Sure.
You know, this image and this kid, I still feel like this when we hear our grandpa's story, who we call daddy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Very, very engaging audience. Thank you so much. But I would be very happy to answer any questions on how you would, want to implement or any aspect of today's presentation.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, Priyadarshan, you are.
Ma'am, how could we engage ourselves on this kind of representations? Where do we get examples? Where do we find to implement these things? Because really, I'm inspired from you, and special thanks to Harsh ma'am too.
Priyadarshan, so your voice got cut off. Is your question done?
Can you hear me once again, ma'am?
Yes, I can.
It is done, ma'am. I just want to make sure to practice everything that you taught me today. And the most important thing is to make sure what we tell to everyone should be understood by them as well.
Absolutely.
So
go ahead.
Proceed, ma'am. No issues.
Yeah. So from what I understand, your question is how do we start implementing this? How do we reference things? How do we get inspired by examples? Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. So I think the first thing you should do is you'll get the YouTube link, right? If you would have definitely gotten something from this session, but probably watch again and identify those, what we call the easy wins, right? What are the areas that you can immediately start implementing, right? So, for example, the messaging. What are your audience today? Who are your stakeholders? Who are your clients? Which type of audience will you make them fall into? Your current projects, are they trying to make a decision? Are they information sharing? Think about how, what type of audience, how would you message to them first, right? That is the first thing. Then try to implement some of the visualization bits. See, simulating or those kind of things, they are very important, but they may not be something you could do in every presentation, right? So at least the visualization bits, right? So for what information you have, what columns you have in your data sets, right? When you analyze, think of what type of chart would be best. How can I make it as clean as possible? How can I clear the clutter, right? So start from those bits, right? What are the most important elements in my dashboard, right? So because when you're trying to tell a story, the first thing should be, it shouldn't be too many bits, right? So maybe you want to tell only 4 or 5 things. What are those macro buckets, right? Work on the visualization, work on a lot on the language, how you would make your thing crisp, right? Very crisp. So I think pick up a project, right? Think of a stakeholder, pick up a project. If you are doing it, let's say with About Infinity, then you'll have to ask who will consume this, right? Like what kind of person is it? A marketing manager, operations manager? Try to ask those questions and accordingly prepare. So I think revise all of this, but immediately start practicing, right? And your final question on, some of these, how do you stimulate using the simulations or personalization? I don't think that's a challenge. Frankly, we can share you some of the links that we have, but even if you just start Googling, there are so many sites today that do it in a very beautiful fashion and engaging fashion. So go through all of them, do a little bit of research on how you can create the drama aspect.
Can I just add on, Rajneet, over here? Yeah. So I think while Rajneet has added almost everything that I could think of, I'll just say one more thing. While, when you story tell, the objective and, the audience will make this presentation different, but there's always this core content, that main message which may not change. So what you can do, maybe, according to your job, or what you can always do is, okay, these are the things I may have to think about today or tomorrow. Like Rajneet said about Googling, so what I usually do is I go to Google, whatever topics are there which I may have to present it today or tomorrow. I will first check out the basic theories of it. I'll go to the news section, check what is currently happening. I'll go to the images section. I'll put funny images, because we have to always make it funny, relatable, to make it interesting, right? I'll put that. I'll go to the video section. I will try to check out that. And one more thing which I always think about is, it's a process. See, it's not a one-day job, right? It takes months and years, and we all are still learners. One more thing which helps is, I always think, okay, if I have to explain this technology, can I see something like this in a day-to-day example? Like, I'll just give you one example here myself. One of the technologies which I sell, I'm actually in cybersecurity, I'm a data protection practitioner. So we have one of these technologies which is data classification. So I try to understand, okay, let's divide it. Data classification. Classification, we see classification schemes all around us, right? If you hopefully will be able to travel very soon, the kind of these what is traffic lights, they signify a classification of the actions you have to do: red, yellow, or maybe green. Or maybe I'm a pure vegetarian, so I need those symbols that, okay, this is green, which means it's a veg food that I'm eating, right? So let's try to kind of bring that kind of analogies. we keep on thinking, we will, if we focus on thinking like this, slowly, slowly, we will be able to, become storytellers and updated storytellers. Right, Rajneet?
Absolutely. Yeah. So some of the pieces I presented, I learned way back when I was interning in Wipro, and some of the pieces I presented, I learned just last month. So it's a journey. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I think even Rajneet mentioned the questions. Questions cannot be ever ignored. So I think maybe, putting this in a questions of the, burning problems that people have, right? So maybe that is also one way to do it. So yes, that is also one thing I thought I'll add. Thank you. And last, of course, right, Rajneet has already mentioned, storytelling is itself a journey. So just, it's like a journey. It's a constant practice or constant approach that you have to have. That's it. Thank you.
Hope that helped.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the informative session. And it was really a great journey starting from the previous Sunday, the first session and second session. It was really amazing. And I'm getting a very amazing feedback from our audience as well. Dear audience, I have already shared the feedback form, and the certificate form has been already rolled it out. If you have not filled the form, please do fill the form. And the certificate will be shared within the 7 working days. So once again, thank you so much for being a lovely audience. And thank you so much, ma'am, Rajneet ma'am, for taking out your valuable time and guiding our learners.
Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you.